Everybody, hello and welcome to another IGEAS panel. This is the first panel that I'm hosting directly, so it's obviously the best one. Jokes aside, we're here talking about funding. So you're going to hear a lot of talk about esports programs and clubs and leagues, but the reality of it is these things cost money. And schools right now, a lot of people are asking them to spend money on lots of things. So maybe video games, it's on the bottom of their priority list. But for all of us, it's at the top of our priority list. So what we aim to do with this panel is discuss some funding options, what people can do within their school or within their resources or really within academia. I have a very experienced group of panelists here, especially when it comes to raising capital and dealing with that. So without further ado, why don't we just start with the introductions. Neil, it's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it, and I'm really happy to be able to speak alongside Rebecca, Bubba, and Albert. So my name is Neil Duffy. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of the Collegiate Star League, which really means, I'm the guy that they rely on to bring in sponsorship, partnership, advertising dollars, and I get to work with a lot of great brands. With that, I get to work with a lot of great schools and students. So I'm excited for the conversation. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, thanks. And Albert, I'm very happy to have you here. What brings you to this panel, my friend?
Oh, thanks again for having me here. I'm just here to talk about collegiate esports. I've spent the past 2.5 years trying to build up esport programs in Arizona. I'm just trying to spread that information out.
Oh, so that's where we've passed a few as many times. I'm Arizona alumni.
Yeah,
go ASU.
all the time.
ASU Esports is often Heroes of the Dorm Champions 2016. Anyways, don't want to brag too much. Rebecca, how are you? It is so good to see you again.
It's so great to see you too, Nick. Thanks for having me, and it's wonderful to be here with all the other panelists. My name is Rebecca Dixon, and I am here with the Gamers. The Gamers is a community and platform that celebrates and highlights females, femme-identifying, non-binary, and all humans who support that in the gaming world. So I'm thrilled to be here. I have a long love and history with esports. My extended family has ownership in Team Envy and the Dallas Fuel. So esports has been a love of mine for a long time. So thanks for having me, and I can't wait to talk more about college esports and the Gamers.
And also, I will also say, Rebecca's probably too modest to admit it, but she has quite some experience raising capital, and she's quite successful at it. So when it comes to trying to get things funding, she's definitely the person to talk to. And last but certainly not least, Bubba, how are you?
I am great, Nick. I'm glad to be here. Hey, this is awesome to be on this amazing event and be right after Garvey, who makes me want to go and take the world by storm somehow. And so yeah, and the panelists are great. I love all these people; they're great, and I get to run a nonprofit every day and help students with the pipeline and help access funding through grants and scholarships, and we just have fun trying to help connect as many people as we can, and help the whole industry. Whatever we can do.
All right, you know what, Bubba, you disappeared on our stream briefly. It's not your fault. Let me just.
I'll move over.
No. Don't worry. You're fine. Don't worry. This is the fun thing about hosting these panels and also being the streamer, because you guys get to see some live OBS. There you go. Let's get everyone back in the right thing. So let's talk funding. I guess the first question I want to ask is, say it's the very first time I've even thought about doing something in esports and collegiate, right? So maybe I've gotten the ear of an ally within my school, right? I've gotten the ear of someone who wants to help me, and the first thing they ask is, how much is this going to cost, right? I'm looking for some practical advice. Do you think people should start off small or sustainable when they're trying to start something within esports in their school? Or should they know, let's go big? Because I know that some schools won't even listen to you unless you're talking about a big activation and a big thing. Neil, you seem to have some want to answer that one first.
Yeah, well, I've been doing it a long time. I remember the day that Kurt Melcher and the Robert Morris team introduced the first scholarship, and that's a lifetime ago. So I don't have the perfect answer to this, but my recommendation is make a business plan, make a little bit of a case around what you want to do, what you want to achieve, how you're going to get there. Pitch it to an internal champion that who's
Yep.
who's a mentor, an advisor, or a professor, and then go up the chain of command to the administration, because everybody just wants to know that there's a plan. Everybody wants to know that there's someone who's going to be committed and work towards it. I think we should all walk before we run.
Yeah.
And as a result, usually start small and build out as you get momentum from the community and buy-in from the administrators. Because I think that here's where we're at 6 years after that announcement from the Robert Morris guys is 300 plus schools offering these scholarships. Is there's definitely a case to be made that this offers not only opportunity to the students from a competitive level, but engagement and marketing, and additional enrollment to the schools.
Yeah.
So it can't be a short-sighted, we've got to make money in year one. Otherwise that's, doomed to be challenging. And I don't want to say doomed to fail, but if the school is looking at this as an accretive revenue stream in the first year, they're looking at it backwards. So make a business plan, execute against the business plan, find like-minded people within the community, and just have a lot of fun building something you're passionate about, and the money will follow after that.
Yeah.
Nick, I have some other thoughts on that.
Yeah, please.
So I second everything Neil just said. You mentioned that I have a little experience in fundraising. The Gamers it launched in early 2020, and we just finished a fundraising round this summer. And I think, raising money for an esports team and thinking what you want to do to get a program off the ground has a lot of similarities probably to raising money for a small business. And if you treat it a little bit like that, as Nick mentioned, definitely a business plan. I think some other good strategies are networking like crazy, identify who your allies are, whether it's, professors, people in the computer science department, club teams. And another thing I would suggest is looking at other schools and models that are working, and what they're doing that you could copy. So those are some initial thoughts.
So, follow up, and I would love to hear your perspectives on this, Albert and Bubba. I agree, and it seems to make sense that you shouldn't be trying to promise anyone huge revenues at first, right? But what are the other type of ROIs that a school can reliably expect? Like, if I'm trying to pitch something and I'm essentially saying, hey, I need money and you will get none of it back, what will they get back?
I think that Neil did touch on this really key part. It's not just about direct avenues of revenue. And I know many schools starting up their programs, I've seen many of their business plans. It's always about, should we build a facility? Should we charge people $25 for X amount of hours, right? But I think the parallels are, you see the most successful programs, it's really that marketing touch, that recruitment touch. What we find at Grand Canyon University is that we're not really expecting an ROI on the facility or just a competitive components, but rather on that community focus, that marketing outreach. After our first year, esports didn't exist the previous year, and suddenly we find that esports is now one of our top 3 recruitment factors, where over 1 in 3 students say that they first heard about GCU or decided to really look and commit to it because of esports.
Wow.
And that's just such a significant draw that it's, at this point, we already write it off as a marketing expenditure.
Wow. Bubba, have you seen similar things in the nonprofit space?
Yeah. I mean, if we look at schools as for-profit, nonprofit, whatever they may be, but really the middle schools, high schools, and colleges I get to talk to, definitely in that space of revenue generation, we definitely see all the verticals you can have in a college with esports. Recreational, intramural, varsity, just using your gaming center as a space for people to play, as well as competition. The big side of it is what colleges are more and more getting into, especially Robert Morris started, UCI, Wichita State, all getting into the curriculum and the accreditation certificates and degrees, which, there was 10 or so maybe last year, now it's 100. It's fun to see them get in the scholastic space. I teach at a college, and I love teaching students, and I think it's important to give that avenue as well. Plus, if you think about it, the administration wants that because that helps recruiting outside of just the activity and the sport. And I mean, Albert's right. People are hearing about colleges now because, or they're getting recruited to colleges because there's something that meets them where they are, which is esports.
Yeah.
And those verticals are important, but it's not just for the curriculum, or it's not just for the competition. I think colleges have a lot to provide. Plus, colleges over high schools or maybe separate organizations already have like development directors and fundraisers who are looking for opportunities to find new sponsors like MSI, Dell, whoever, these companies that don't normally give to their college when it's usually some local company or something. So tech companies are getting into colleges more often because of esports now.
You know, something that you've all mentioned is the importance of not only finding allies, but, you know, like finding people within the organization to believe in your cause, right? To like champion, yes, like esports is something positive. So what do you think are some of, what are the types of allies? Like, what are the types of things that is very, very vital, right? Like, sure, there's one thing if your favorite professor just says, yeah, go get him, you can do anything. But what are really the type of things that if I'm really trying to make this happen, who do I talk to? What are the type of departments within academia that can look at esports and be like, yeah, okay, I think there's something there?
I would take this and I'd say I don't think it's necessarily a certain department. I think it's individuals that you can recognize. Generally, they're people that are on the high end of millennials, which is for me, right, mid-30s. Is you want to find someone who's digitally native and somebody who grew up with a controller in their hands, because we recognize and understand how valuable games are. If I was to go to a dean or a president of a university who's 65 years old and probably looks down upon the industry as a quote unquote waste of time, they probably don't appreciate the problem solving skills, the camaraderie, the teamwork, the communication, and the confidence that it instills in young men and women who play these games. And I think the most important thing is when you're on a college campus, what do we all want? We want to find our tribe. We want to find our friends. Yeah. We want to find a community who's equally as passionate about something that we are and share it. Whether that's going out and going to the bars, or whether it's supporting football, or whether it's being really involved in academia and on the debate team. And it doesn't matter what the vertical is. It's about finding like-minded people who enjoy spending time together. And with that is where you create magic, which is friendships, which is relationships, which is building the confidence to put these people out into the industry. And what I would say is when we look at gaming and esports on campus, and we kind of touched on it, is people look at it from the competitive standpoint and say, well, how is a varsity program really going to build up, leaders of tomorrow? And that's the wrong way to look at it, because the 5 people that might make up of the League of Legends team are going to need to be supported by the coach, is going to need to be supported by the manager, is going to need to be supported by the production team, is going to need to be supported by the social media team and beyond, and graphic designers. And there's so much that goes into it. And the parallels between this and any other industry, whether it be sports, media, entertainment, tech, and beyond, is we're building leaders of tomorrow. So how do we find the administrator that is forward thinking and progressive enough to embrace esports? Is find that person who's passionate about young men and women and teaching them and raising them up as leaders. Find someone who probably plays games as a hobby or used to play games, and find someone who you can relate to and is just so passionate about their job and being on campus and being a leader of students, that they're going to get behind your passion once they feel how excited you are about what you're trying to build.
Well, you know what? That answer pretty much explains everything. Let's just end the panel now. I mean, just do exactly what Neil said, and it's all going to work out. Actually, we have someone in chat actually made a very, very good point. Dan, a clerk, says, any university can feasibly fund a program. Esports is genuinely inexpensive compared to sports. And Rebecca, I want to kind of set you up for a question I think you would be well-versed in answering. Because Neil, you mentioned a community, and I think that's very important. I love this, this concept of tribe, and also the fact that esports is so relatively cheap to start off. You can just start a tournament. You can create that tribe relatively simply, even on the student level. So, Rebecca, what experience have you seen when women in the gaming space are trying to take those first steps in creating their tribe? Because I've been a college student, and back when I was in college, any esports, any gaming thing was all men. Like that was it. It was just all males. That's it. And that was just the reality of it. But you and your team, you're trying to forge a different narrative. So how do you think women and young women students can best go about building their community?
Well, first of all, I loved that you referenced the word tribe that Neil used, because I was going to reference that. I think it is the reason, whatever your tribe is, that is the reason we founded our company. Because listen, there aren't a ton of women in esports yet, but there certainly are a lot of female gamers.
Oh yeah.
And so I think there are a lot of different pieces of it. One thing is just sort of, doing a little bit of research. I think one of you mentioned it before, and finding whether it's professors or, friends or whatever who game. Because, almost 50% of gamers are women, right? So a lot of women game who you don't know game. So, there could be potential allies to help you expand and create your tribe that you don't even know about. And I think, the gamers, what we are trying to do, and what I think is just in line with what you're asking, is sort of when we, our tagline is celebrate and highlight women in gaming, to show that there actually are a lot of women who already are in gaming, and we, through various platforms, our podcast and Twitch, etc., want everybody to know that. So what can college students do right now? They can just network and talk to people and game, and the women can think and know they can do it. One of the colleges with an esports program, Pepperdine University, their esports program is run by a female. So they're a really good example. It's not an all-female team, but it's run by a female. And I think just, continue to believe that it can happen. Sort of a shameless little plug here. The gamers are having our Gamers Awards coming up in this month, and we have a lot of content behind it. And on November 4th, the streamer Katie Bedford is talking about this exact topic.
Really?
How to network in esports, whether it's for a career, all of the different possible careers, because of course there are professional esports players, but there are a million other careers that are behind that, developers and designers, and even our podcast is hosted by a voice actress, and so Katie is going to be talking about networking if you want to get into esports as a profession. But I think a lot of those tools will really translate to networking on a college campus. And the final thing I'll say, just as a sort of a data point, is we spent this summer doing a ton of networking for colleges around the country. And we targeted STEM clubs, and we targeted ones with esports teams, and then esports clubs. And I gotta tell you, the list of women that we got is absolutely enormous.
Wow.
I mean, there are so many women at all colleges who are interested in gaming, and what they were signing up for when we reached out to them was they want to be notified about ways to connect with other women who are gaming in college. And then, the other piece of it is that they're interested in potentially gaming as a career. So all of this, just some different ideas about how women, and again, Neil, this goes to what you said with any tribe, but the one that, that we're focusing on is women. It's just all about finding your people.
Yeah. So, speaking of a tribe that is very well defined, GCU has an extremely impressive esports program, right? You guys have an absolutely beautiful facility, and I've been on the campus myself. It's a bustling campus, especially when it comes to gaming. You guys have a huge Smash Brothers scene, which I absolutely love. But I know it didn't start out that way, right? I know it's not as if you guys just said, "Oh, cool, let's start doing esports," and then you immediately got all this funding. Now, Albert, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's either Coke or Pepsi, right? Don't you guys have a major sponsor? Yeah. So first of all, congratulations. I think any school would be thrilled if they could, land someone that big to fund their esports things. But how does that happen? How does one, what are even the steps if I'm a school or if I'm a leader trying to emulate what GCU did, like what are some ways in which I can start my tribe and maybe it grows impressive enough to attract a sponsor like Pepsi?
Yeah, I think it's really a two-front answer because there are two key components, two pillars to an esports program. You have the students and you have the administration.
Yeah.
From the student standpoint, I think what's key is making sure, again, what Neil and Rebecca emphasize heavily, and I believe in 100%, having that tribe solidified, having that community set firmly with its foundation is the first step. So I think one of the big proponents of why larger programs continue to rise and grow even larger is because they already have the tools and content ready for marketing. Many of these organizations, especially what we have at GCU, we don't have to work as hard anymore. We don't have to reach out as often to our network to get people to sponsor our program to help the students out. Rather, it's once you have the photos and the videos and some kind of repository, you need to keep making sure that administration and students working together, they're building up some kind of database, some kind of history that others can reach out to, because you're not just recruiting out the network. You want the network to recruit out your students. You want them to reach out to you. It's a two-way street here. So one of the key parts is making sure the students have ownership, making sure they're an active part of program, because I think one of the biggest fears of student organizations trying to connect with their administrations to launch programs is that they're afraid they'll lose power. They're afraid that what they built up over the years as student leaders, the administration will take it from them.
Yeah, and
so
then
instead of that,
then it will lose that authenticity, right? I've seen that many times. You have a very thriving esports club and it's great, and all of a sudden the school takes over and it's like there's all of these different mandates for education, and now you got to do some GPA to even play. Like I've seen some communities stifled by a lot of those rules. One last thing, and then Bubba, I have a question for you about the creativity that I think you need, because a chat is having a really fascinating conversation about the alternate means of finding funding. But Albert, what can I do if I don't have the marketing power like GCU? Because GCU is just incredible marketers. I believe you guys had like huge banners in the Phoenix airport for like a year, right? So it's like GCU has some very, very powerful marketing, but how can I start? So I agree with you. I believe that marketing is the key, but I'm a much smaller school. What advice do you have?
I think one of the beautiful things about esports is that huge focus on community, where anyone can become a content creator, anyone can become a star player, anyone can share their passions. So it all stems down to the students, their ownership, and their passion. Many schools are just completely student-led organizations. They're very small. They start out small, like 5, 10 students, but it builds up over time. It's a snowball effect. I think that student leaders building out their own social media platform, they're just taking photos on their smartphones, grassroots efforts. It's not about trying to make the biggest splash in the ocean here. It's about having consistent waves. You want to keep building it, where wave after wave you get noticed, and you're creating a cookie crumb path, I guess, to where your program will
I love
up.
that phrase, consistent waves of marketing. By the way, I'm stealing that. I'm telling you right now.
No problem. I didn't trademark it.
That is now how I'm going to describe, organic sustained marketing. Absolutely love it. So Bubba, there's been this like whole side chat going on in chat, which is actually awesome, right? Like people are actively solving these problems. And one of the topics that came up is like, you don't always need to go to like the athletics department to get funding, right? Like you don't always need to go to like, hi, I'm looking for the esports funding person. Like, like so many schools don't have that, and so many organizations don't have that. So what are some of the creative ways, and what are some of the, maybe the out of the box solutions maybe you have done in your career to try to get these things funded? Because I know there's tons of ways to get money from people, but there's also ways to do it sustainably, and there's ways to do it that works.
Yeah, 100%, Nick. I mean, to Albert's point, the clubs do start small, but But if you survey kids on middle school, high school, college campuses, do you want an esports club? You expect 10, you get 100. And that's a very common thing. And they do build up. And they typically, the colleges and the schools, high schools I talk to, they're usually the biggest student club on campus.
Yeah.
And they're also the ones with the least funding or no funding sometimes. It depends on the school, how engaged it comes down to esports literacy, right? Okay, so someday we're not going to have summits and events like this convincing people, right?
I hope not soon.
We are going to have summits talking about the history of how we were on these conferences helping build this industry and shape it, because it has no ceiling. And there's 2,500 colleges in the world, 2,500,000 colleges in the world. There's 5,000 in the United States. I think that number is right. And so there's a lot of room for growth. There's in the United States, there's 35,000 high schools, about 3,000 of them have esport clubs. So, and triple that for middle schools. So there's a lot of room for growth. And I think if we talk about esports literacy and esports education literacy, and the idea for this pipeline is, we think it's pretty similar to traditional sports. And in the chat, they're talking about athletic departments and how to get funding from there, because nobody's playing sports right now, kind of, sort of. And where's the funding? Can we use that funding? Well, they're also lower on funding because they're not selling tickets. So there's no real revenue there. So it's hard to kind of pull that string. Literacy, I think, is huge for us. In the chat, I'll also drop in, you can use any of our free courses to go and teach your uncle, your Aunt Karen who doesn't get esports. Take a free course and learn what is esports and why it matters. There's a lot of them all across the internet to understand it. But like I said, if someday there's going to be a point where we are not having to explain it. How did we explain soccer 50 years ago in the United States to people? Like, what? This is not, what are you calling it, football? No, we got football, right? So it took a while, but now, when Mia Hamm was playing in the Olympics, and then we have all this other stuff happening, it's grown. So we're going to have the ability soon to be able to have this conversation where people don't just think about Ninja and League of Legends World Championships when they hear esports and big money, and kids thinking, I'm 12, I'm going to go pro if I make a YouTube channel, everything. There's this whole pipeline we're all trying to help create, and we're all on the same road. We're just in different cars going the same direction, and we, a lot of us are trying to jump in the same car and carpool through this madness that is the Wild West that we've used over and over.
There are so many good metaphors going on here, right?
Sorry,
I gotta keep
my wife would say, use too many metaphors. I don't get what you're saying, but
I love it.
Ideally, when it comes to funding, you can join Neil's organization, CSL. There's a lot of BYOC stuff, and it's free. Survey the students on campus, play in some of their free leagues. Like, why not? Like, just do it, and then you show you do that, and then you run a charity event for the local hospital or something, and you have people buy into the event for your space. And then that shows the administration the benefit and the values and all of the information is why it matters.
You know what? First of all, we are winding down the panel. We got about 50 minutes left, so I just want to invite chat. If you guys have any questions, now is the time. Start asking your questions. I can, pass them over to our amazing panelists. But before that, so from my esports beginnings, right? When I was in college, at ASU, we were lucky. It just so happened that during my college years, some of the most talented Smash Brothers players in Arizona history were forming, right? We had just really, really top talent, and they were so good, it grew eyeballs on our school in ways we didn't expect. We even had other top players visiting just so they could play in our weeklies, because you had people like Axe, you had people like Taj, you had really, really household names going there. But I have since talked with other schools, and I've tried to mentor other esports leaders, and sometimes the skill isn't there. Sometimes the passion is there, but it's just not the community like around esports. No one really takes video games that seriously. It's something that maybe doesn't look like the GCU or the AC or the ASU model, which is high competition all the time, but maybe it shifts into other things. So, Neil, I just want to ask, what do you think the options are for a school that, okay, well, like maybe we don't want to involve gun games, because I've seen that before too, right? You have an active Halo community, but the school says, no, I'm sorry, there's gun, right? What do you do when the potential's there, but it seems as if the community of gamers haven't really launched on to esports? Like, do you have any experience in trying to answer that question?
Well, we do, and I think your Smash Brothers example is great, right? Between guys like Taj and Axe, and the community is strong. And DeBuzz was a student 2 years ago, and now he's top 3 in the world, top 5 in the world. And I think it's fascinating because we looked at, when we speak to the students, what's their favorite game, and it was Super Smash Brothers, and it has been for years, especially Melee. It's got an unbelievable crowd.
Yeah.
And I was doing an event at the Olympics in Brazil around Smash Brothers in 2016, and I happened to meet a couple of guys, and they had a fully organized Smash Brothers league. This was Smash 4 Collegiate, and they were very much a sister company with the Melee games. And coming out of that, the nice thing was we were an organized company that had some resources, being a little bit of money in the bank to be able to actually take some risks. And we said, guys, let's fold us all together and try and bring the Melee games and Smash 4 Collegiate under under CSL, because at the end of the day, the students are going to dictate what's going to happen on campus. And I think this is a fascinating approach, because now in collegiate esports, and Bubba probably sees it in the high school esports space too, is 2019 and 2020, we are the hottest segment in the industry. Is varsity or scholastic esports. 2016, 17, 18 is we were an afterthought, because you had the Overwatch League forming and you had Call of Duty League forming. And I love that alt sweatshirt.
Oh yeah, right. Absolutely love it. Got a shout out to all for that.
See, and I love that. But I think now you're starting to see, the bifurcation of in the industry of scholastic esports between people that are doing it from the bottom up and people that are doing it from the top down. And I think there's going to be a clear winner, that is the people that are doing it from the bottom up. Because if you go to the administration and you say, hey, we want to do X, Y, Z, and have you locked in this agreement, and then take it to your students, if the students like it, great. If they don't like it, they're going to do their own thing like they've always done. And whether that's Call of Duty or Halo or CSGO or these other games, the students are going to play the games they want to play with their friends. And if you can organize that and professionalize that into a league or a tournament, all the better. But it's not going to come from the administration dictating, these are the games that we're going to be involved in. Otherwise, you're going to have a little bit of a challenging situation in a year or two, where there's a rebellion or revolt from the students who are not interested in those games that are being mandated by the university, and they're going to play what they want to play. And I think this is what's happening when you force something when you force a round peg into a square hole. Is the Overwatch League, we can all admit, it's not having the success that people had hoped. And I'm a big fan of the Overwatch League, but that's because they made the game for esports. They made the league really before the game had the community, and as a result, you're starting to see the challenges extrapolated out over the next 2 or 3 years. So let's not do that. Let's do what CSL does and do what the Varsity Esports Federation does, and let's build from the ground up with the students, for the students, and really listen to them first and foremost.
First of all, Neil, I could talk to you about the topic of the Overwatch League and the postmortem of that for literally, I feel like, days. It's such a fascinating case study, right? So one more question for Rebecca, and then I would love to move on to some of these community questions. So historically, women have faced some obstacles when it comes to playing at the same competitive level of these male-dominated communities who have, quite frankly, had years and years and years of head start, right? Part of the realities of esports culture is, because it was so like male dominated, you have just these fundamentals that a lot of gamers are just prepared with, that makes it very easy to make that transition to competing, to thinking about strategy, to thinking along those lines. However, just as you said, and it is a reality that I see, there are more women gamers than ever before, and they are extremely passionate, especially the students who are trying to either start their esports career or start their own club. So what advice would you have for a woman who is trying to start their own esports initiative or their own esports club and may face those same obstacles and may face some of those historical barriers that make it so like women tournaments or like women play isn't as I guess accepted among the hardcore esports community?
And we've touched on this in some of the other questions already, but I do think that if at the end of the day you're at a college and they don't have an esports club or team, and it's something you're interested in starting it, it's what Neil said at the beginning with finding your tribe. Also identify. I mean, one problem women have, I think, in this situation is it's very hard to imagine something when it doesn't exist. Yeah. And so if you're not looking at a ton of models of, whether it's all female teams or even whether it's successful co-ed teams where women are welcome and all that, if it's not there, it's hard to imagine. So, I think it's the same stuff that we've been saying, identify gamers. I think definitely it has to come from the bottom up, right? So I agree with that. So if you can find a couple of people who are sort of your teammates, whether it's maybe a female faculty member who's a gamer, there have to be a lot of them. I mean, there has to, it's math. Yeah. I think another thing that, we're getting involved with, and it's slightly off topic for this panel, but I think it's on topic for this question, is the same issue of not seeing as many women in sort of the gaming industry. And it's harder to think, to imagine it if you can't see it. But that is the needle is moving on that slowly, but it's moving. So once, the industry, the gaming industry starts, coming around, I think publicly having women be a bigger part of it. And that's in every single part of it, from the protagonists in the games to the developers to, everything. I think that will trickle down. So the very best advice I could give to somebody who's wanting to do this: work hard, network, build a business model, just do your thing. And it'll probably be a little bit harder than it is for the guys, but you'll get there.
I want to second that very practical advice of if you don't see something, if it's not there, it's hard to imagine it. That's actually the wisdom of that goes far beyond just trying to create an esports thing, right? Like the visibility of this is so important. So I actually think that answers the question in a way that I didn't expect, but I actually like that solution much more. Like, I actually think the first step is you just need to get out there. You don't need to worry about if you're winning. You don't need to worry about if you're competitive. You just need to get out there because, that's how you gain more of that tribe. That's how you signal that not only is your competitive team a place for women, but it's a place where women can get better and can train and all that. We have a question from Emmy O'Rourke. She asked, and Bubba, I think you're probably good for this one. How do you get viewers, fan, and community to understand that your charity event isn't just a marketing gimmick? I see a lot of teams and brands associate with charities, as a way to get funding for their events or something, and movements that get slandered for doing it for the fame. Even though that's not their intention. So I think that's a good little highlight. It is not their intention, and yet that is often the social media echo, right? People say, so what experience do you have in that? How do you make it authentic? How do you make these charity things seem real?
Sure. Intentionality is huge. I've been kicking around this idea a lot with folks about esports isn't a bandwagon. And social inequality is not a bandwagon to jump on, and diversity inclusion is not a bandwagon to jump on. But at the same time, we weren't talking about things in the aspects of charity and mission and causes. And if we have these opportunities to talk about them, if not now, then when? Yeah. And so for me, I guess the example there for Emmy, trying to understand in the charity space, intentionality on what you're doing it for and why you're doing it, and having a clear message is important. And not just marketing. Okay, I'm going to do a charity streaming event and a charity tournament, and we're going to do it because we want clout. That's the intentionality there, and it's hard to tell. But there's also we're living in a pretty toxic environment from when Facebook was created to video games being online and being played. We all know the toxicity. I'll say, Rebecca, I've got female gamers that tell us they don't even turn on our voice chat because they don't want to be harassed, because otherwise they become harassed because they're female.
True. It's
plenty of videos.
Yeah, you know what?
Videos, TikToks.
You know what? Actually, we had a panel at our last year's IGEC conference called "Voice Chat Off," and the whole talk was about that reality, because there is so little benefit towards revealing yourself as a woman in gaming. It's literally almost all negative, and those are some of the realities we have to face. Great question, Emmy. We actually have one more thing I would like to add for that from the producing side of it. If you start off early with the intent to do something for charity, I think what goes the wrong way is when it's some afterthought. For when the event's already made, you're so-and-so, and now you're thinking, okay, well, how do I get this buzz, or how do I... You don't want to do that. It's better to have your event you've been working on have zero charity, and then just focus on your next event from the ground up. Work with the people, work with those experts. They know more about their charity cause than you, and the more that you allow them to help advise your event, the more authentic it gets.
And I'll say, Nick, you really, streamers and content creators and through esports and tournaments have a lot of power, and they've raised millions and millions. And I work with a guy who's raised like 8 million in 6 years through charity online esports events, and that's because it's community. People get it, and people are understanding of it.
Yeah. So our last question, and honestly, it is probably the most relevant. So thank you, Jack Slater, for getting me back on topic. When you don't have access to academic funds, how would you go about esports fundraising, such as for a university's teams, travel expenses, and also to encourage those who might not understand the esports scene to back the cause? So in short, let's just imagine that academic resources are just out of the question. School says no, it's never going to happen. What are some other avenues and how you can raise funds? Yeah, Neil, please.
I would say you find the right people that are within the club, and to Rebecca's point, you network. If you go to HyperX and you state your claim, or whoever it may be, Steel Series, Turtle Beach, if you go, these clubs want to support you. They just need to be made aware of what the initiatives are. So that could help you out on the peripheral side or the chair side. Systems are a bit tougher, but if you make the case, if you can go, there's about 4 or 5 different paths that I would go down, is local businesses. So if you can go to local pizza shop or local sandwich shop around your university or college, and you say, hey, listen, we need $2,000 in sponsorship, and as a result, we'll do, BOGOs and, buy one, get one, drive to retail. Everybody's going to look at that as an ROI. Or you do small localized sponsorships, the car dealerships in your region, the insurance brokers in your local market. There's so many opportunities. Or you go nationally and you just start networking through things like LinkedIn and talking on panels. And there's going to be brands that you can connect to that are willing to allocate nominal amount of funds in their marketing and sponsorship budgets, but meaningful and material amount of money to you guys to get $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 to be able to travel to local events. So it's all about having confidence, having a plan, and putting in the work, because there's always going to be found money that you can get. Think of all these golf tournaments that have sponsored holes and sponsored flags, and these are just people that talk to other people that get money that they have to put to use. So a lot of marketing budgets are use it or lose it. So get to them, talk to them. The Verizons of the world, the AT&Ts, the Intels, all of these brands want to talk to students. It's just a matter of putting it in front of them so they can have an opportunity to see it, converse, and then hopefully give you some money back to your club.
I mean, as someone who has gotten infinite amount of free pizzas for all the clubs and stuff that I did in college, yes, that's, you know what, that should be your very, very first goal. If you can't get free pizzas from your local college pizza thing, you need to evaluate your strategies on fundraising. That's the first benchmark. Anyways, guys, this has been a really, really awesome panel. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. By the way, for anyone in chat who are looking for some of those networking opportunities, please visit our career fair and panel booth. So all of our sponsors, like imagine this is a real event. They're standing at their booths. They're there. They are waiting to not only talk to you, but to let you know about the resources they have. We have all sorts of cool things you can sign up for. But that is the end of our panel. I just want to give a huge shout out to all of our panelists. Thank you guys so much. And thank you guys. Stay tuned for our next panel that's coming up in about 15 minutes. This is Nick Durazio signing out. Bye, guys.
Thank you, guys.